4 o'clock. Sheriff came back again. This time I got arrested. But he let me drive my own car to jail. Wasn't that sweet of him?
William Winter, I would argue, is the best governor the state of Mississippi has ever had.
In 2008, when we elected the first black president, there was jubilation, and yet for these past 3 years, we have seen acts of repression.
He said, well, you know, you have ancestors, your father, your auntie. These folks are the ones that are protecting you from all that actually comes at you. And so right now, I know for a fact that Attorney Madison is one of those spiritual ancestors.
Because the establishment knew that once they allowed us colored folk to vote, that our voting potential would be what it is today.
And when I got there, I had revenge in my mind. And I told my friends, I said, I'm going back. I said, I'm going to do something to somebody. And they said, don't do it. They'll get you.
My name is John Garner. I taught physics at Tougaloo and was involved in the civil rights movement in the early, middle 60s and 70s. When I came to Tougaloo, they had a couple of physics courses, but they didn't have any physics major. And so I was delighted to play a part in the creation of the physics major, adding additional courses. And we developed the Democratic Executive Committee for Madison County. Went to many meetings of that. Also got involved with church integration. Took a Tougaloo student to Galloway Church. The two of us got arrested on October 20th, 1963. Also got involved with school desegregation, helping students who were in those days what was called freedom of choice. The beginning of integration in southern Madison County. They were very brave and they suffered a lot, particularly when in the high schools. The Galloway children in particular were the ones I knew. Tougaloo's has a special place in my heart. My wife and I had decided to give our bodies to science when we die, but I have developed a disease, and we've discovered that the medical center won't accept my body because of the disease. So we were talking about it. Marguerite said, you know, I'd like to have you cremated and buried out there at the Tougaloo grave, so the Tougaloo cemetery. So I guess that kind of says something about our connection to Tougaloo.
Hi, my name is Susan Glisson, and I direct the William Winter Institute for Racial Reconciliation, which is based at the University of Mississippi. And we have the pleasure of serving community leaders as they attempt to build bridges across historic racial divisions and make their communities better places. I had the pleasure in 1997 of coordinating the only Deep South public forum for President Clinton's initiative on race. And it was the first time that a sitting president had called for a national conversation on race without that having been precipitated by a crisis. We were really excited about that at the University of Mississippi because our thought was it's too late to wait until a crisis comes to begin important conversations about race. We need to be proactive. We are so excited. I think one of the most important things that we do is serve young people throughout the state. Of course, we work very closely with students on campus who are working to try to create safe spaces to talk about difficult issues like social segregation, like hazing around race. You know, we have a difficult history at the university in terms of race, and so we want to create dialogue groups where students can talk about these issues safely. And they've developed some pretty strong student leadership to deal with some of those issues. But we also wanted to reach out to high school students, rising high school sophomores and juniors. We bring them to campus now in the summer for about 2 weeks, and we share with them a civil rights history of Mississippi. We talk to them about community development and how they can do amazing things in their communities to make their communities a better place.
is Hickman Johnson, pastor of Farish Street Baptist Church. My involvement goes back to graduate school. I was a seminary student in Atlanta, and the influence of Martin King in Atlanta was widespread. I was in the Atlanta University Synod, and therefore had the opportunity to meet Dr. Benjamin Mays, William Holmes Borders, Daddy King. So anyone who was in Atlanta for any length of time was influenced by the King legacy and the King history. I thank the Hamer Institute, and I thank others for considering me for the award.
My name is DeAndre Ori. I'm professor and chair of the Political Science Department here at Jackson State University. I knew attorney Isaiah Madison in the capacity of colleagues. We both worked in the Department of Political Science together. I knew what and who Isaiah Madison was. The problem is that Isaiah Madison, in my opinion, was an invisible giant. That is that not many folk gave him the respect that he deserved while he was here on this earth. Attorney Madison was someone who I think really sacrificed his training as an attorney to actually do public service. He really disavowed, if you will, corporate attorneys. He was a grassroots type of person, and he actually was really into social change.
My name is Flonzie Brown Wright. I'm a native of Farm Haven, Mississippi, resided in Canton and Jackson during my career. I'm here today because I'm one of the persons who will be awarded the Fannie Lou Hamer Humanitarian Award in April. I was born to poor parents, but very proud parents. And the things that our parents taught us to not only to believe in ourselves, but if someone else could do it, then so could we. My mom was a seamstress, and she wanted her only daughter to learn how to crochet, how to sew, and to do those things that she knew good homemakers could, because she was the very best of a homemaker. So with mom and dad together, my dad was a public worker, they taught us 3 children how to survive against the odds, how to believe in ourselves, and to become the very best that we could be. My advocacy began many years ago, and today I still am trying to make a difference. I have a saying that I coined some years ago. It's just a simple little saying, and it's thus: if your space is no better when you leave than when you came, you need to redefine your journey. We're all on a journey, and we're going to leave a legacy. Someone, when they hear your name, Dr. Daphne, they're going to remember you as somebody, as something. They're going to put some other adjectives to your name. So it's up to you to decide how you want to be remembered.
My name is James Lapp Baker. I'm a 1970 graduate from Jackson State College. I was on the campus when what I call a massacre occurred. It wasn't a riot, it was a massacre. And it was designed, it was planned, and the plan was carried out.
Hi, I'm Tim Spofford. I'm the author of the book Lynch Street. Lynch Street is a documentary narrative about the incident at Jackson State College in May 1970. In that incident, 2 students were killed and a total of 12 students were injured.
Someone stuck their head in the door and said, "Everybody get back across to the campus because something is going on." We just picked up everything and walked out. And we went to the corner of Lynch and Dalton and looked down in the direction of the Masonic Temple, and we saw and heard some young men walking up the street with traffic barricades where they had picked them up and were walking toward the intersection of Lynch and Dalton, and they were chanting, "Hell no, we won't go. Hell no, we won't go."
They had a little incident where motorists had come through, as they generally did. They would come through and use the N-word, throw eggs. One young lady, a student, was hit by one of the cars. They would throw rocks and bottles and everything else. And it was getting close to the end of the year for graduation.
The killings on the campus here at Jackson State occurred about 10 days after the killings at Kent State University. The killings at Kent State drew tremendous national and even worldwide attention, and the killings here got a great deal of attention, but that attention was very intense and very quick.
I recall that as I was going down Rose Street, I saw something that was surprising, where I saw an ambulance headed without a light on in the direction of the campus. Now, what's important here is that in those days, if you needed an ambulance, you did not call 911. You would call the funeral home. And so I saw an ambulance being dispatched in the direction of the campus. It didn't make sense to me then. But a few minutes later, I heard a volley of gunfire that sounded like thunder. And then it began to make sense to me that something was happening on campus.
All of a sudden we hear the marching. And we're looking and we see the highway patrol, Mississippi Highway Patrolmen, and the city police officers. One gentleman stepped out front. This guy's name was Jones. As a matter of fact, he was murdered down in Mendenhall. I won't get into what happened to him. But anyway, he stepped out with a bullhorn and he said, "May I have your attention, please?" And when he said that, somebody did hurl a bottle. And when that bottle burst, that's when all hell broke loose. It was almost like it was Vietnam, although I never knew about Vietnam. I refused to go to Vietnam. It was just shooting. And all you could hear was people, students,
That jar landed, startled some of the officers, and at least one and as many as 3 highway patrolmen fired into the air, and some of those shots went into Stewart Hall.
And when I got home, my relatives were calling to make sure I was okay because they had heard there had been a lot of shooting on campus. That was a night that I still recall, and as I think more about it, those events in retrospect began to cause me to really think about what was going on and was it planned. And the fact that we did not get an opportunity to go through the normal graduation experiences that you would expect here at Jackson State, it left a sense of loss for me. I had planned to just come on campus every day and just relax, something I hadn't had a chance to do for 4 years, and I lost all of that.
And received a one-page letter from President Nixon offering his apology for what had happened. Well, 2 students are dead. It was a planned event. And in my classes, I asked my students, the first question I asked them, how many of you here know anything about May 15, 1970? And not one hand went up. Not one. Not one. That's why you have the plaza, because of that event. So I took it upon myself to not only teach cultural geography, world regional geography, physical geography, urban affairs, housing problems in America. I also took it upon myself to teach students about the history of Jackson State and what happened here on May 15, 1970, so it would never be forgotten.